Have you ever felt that something wasn't quite right in your relationship? Maybe it was a change in routine, a new behavior that seemed out of character, or a growing distance that you couldn't explain. What would you do if the nagging feeling refused to go away? This is my story, how I went from trusting my instincts to uncovering a truth I never wanted to face. It all began a few months ago. My wife and I had been married for nearly 10 years, and like any couple, we had our ups and downs, but recently something felt different. She was more distant, her phone always glued to her hand, and her work hours seemed to stretch longer and longer. When I asked her about it, she would brush it off, blaming stress at work or needing time to herself. At first, I tried to be understanding. We all need our space, right? But the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. She wasn't just busy, she was avoiding me. Conversations were shorter, our time together was strained, and the warmth that once defined our relationship had faded. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that we'd get through it. But late at night, lying awake while she slept beside me, my mind would race with doubts. One evening, after she had left for yet another late meeting, I found myself alone with my thoughts, unable to shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I remembered a conversation I had with a friend years ago, where he mentioned catching his ex in a lie through a simple hidden camera. At the time, it seemed like something out of a spy movie, dramatic and unnecessary. But now, in my current state, it didn't seem so far-fetched. The idea of installing a hidden camera weighed on me heavily. It felt like a betrayal of trust. But then again, if my suspicions were true, wasn't that trust already broken? I wrestled with the decision for days, not wanting to believe that my wife could be hiding something so serious from me. But the signs were there, and they were becoming impossible to ignore. Finally, I made up my mind. I ordered a small, discreet camera, something that could blend into our living room without raising any suspicion. The day it arrived, my hands trembled as I set it up, carefully positioning it to capture the whole room. I felt a mix of guilt and anticipation, hoping I was wrong but needing to know for sure. The first few days were torture. Every time she left the house, I would check the footage, bracing myself for what I might find. At first, everything seemed normal. She was just going about her day, watching TV, reading, or chatting on the phone. I started to doubt myself, wondering if I had let my imagination get the best of me. But then, everything changed. One evening, after she had left for what she said was a work dinner, I sat down to review the latest footage. What I saw made my blood run cold. She wasn't alone. There was a man in our living room, someone I had never seen before. They were sitting close, too close, and the way they looked at each other, there was no mistaking what was going on. I watched in stunned silence as they talked, laughed, and eventually crossed a line that shattered any remaining doubt I had. The evidence was right there, in plain view, and it hit me like a freight train. The person I had shared my life with, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, was betraying me in the worst possible way. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, hurt, disbelief. I wanted to confront her immediately, to demand answers, but I knew I needed to keep my composure. I needed more than just a moment of anger. I needed the whole truth. For the next few days, I continued to monitor the camera, gathering more footage, more proof. Each time I watched, it was like reliving the betrayal all over again. But I knew it had to be done. Finally, when I felt I had enough, I decided it was time to confront her. I'll never forget the look on her face when I showed her the footage. At first, she tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. Her excuses came tumbling out: stress, loneliness, a moment of weakness, but none of it mattered. The trust we had built over a decade was gone in an instant. We talked for hours that night, going over every painful detail. She begged for forgiveness, promised it would never happen again, but I knew there was no going back. The damage was too deep, the wounds too raw. Our marriage, the life we had built together, was over. In the days that followed, I was a mess of emotions. Anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss consumed me. But as time passed, I began to realize something important. Installing that hidden camera, as difficult as it was, gave me the truth I needed to move forward. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the one I needed. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel something is wrong, don't ignore it. Trust your instincts, even when it's hard. Whereas sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that set you free.